Good afternoon, Express Nation. It is January 19th. I know last Friday I was a little off on dropping my podcast, and that kind of led me to re-looking at my personal schedule, looking at my content schedule because last week was a really bad content overall for me between a lot of different things. So what I'm going to be doing now, I'm going to stay consistent with my social drops that I do over on Instagram, talking with my transfer portal reactions and all the stuff that I drop on Instagram and kind of free up some space for me because I do have a lot of schooling that I have to complete. So Monday is going to be the official drop day. Every Monday, I'll be dropping a new video or a new podcast on the transfer portal and overall just team film in general. And that will give me an opportunity to continue to be consistent on my drops on my other social platforms. So with that being out the way, and I've said that, that's going to be the new structure. Monday will be the new podcast drop until it changes. I don't think it's going to really change for the rest of the off season. Monday is going to be the day that I drop every podcast. I might do specials in between, but Monday will be the official drop day. And I will make sure I'll update y'all on any other social media content that I'm posting. So like right now, over on Instagram, I'm dropping transfer portal reactions, and that is probably going to continue until spring ball starts. I probably will continue to react to a bunch of different guys committing or what teams did in the transfer portal until spring ball is open. And once it opens, then I'll probably switch up what I'm posting over on Instagram. But just with my personal schedule, with like school and work, and then trying to get 2 podcasts out in that week on top of my Instagram drops, it was just a lot. And I missed last week really bad. I mean, last week was a really bad week. I think I only got 2 Instagram drops and I missed Friday's podcast. So I need to just tighten up my schedule, limit some of the stress on me, and hopefully y'all can get better content now. But with that all said and done, I want to talk about what's really going to be talked about in this podcast, and that's being the national championship game, being that it is this evening. And then there's a team that I will admit I did not give a lot of respect to earlier in my transfer portal podcast, and that is LSU. A couple weeks ago, I said LSU just has too many holes right now, and until they're filled, I cannot give you a proper stance on the program. But LSU has done that very thing since that podcast. In that podcast, I talked about its receiver room was probably going to be its biggest weapon in 2026, grabbing 10 or 11 guys. Eugene, led by Eugene Wilson and Jace Brown out of Kansas State, Eugene being out of Florida. Those are going to be the top name guys, the biggest impact in that receiving core. But you got a bunch of different guys. You got someone out of Baylor, a Mason out of Baylor is going to be a phenomenal freshman. You got Romeo Mothershed out of Troy. There's going to be another guy, and you got a lot of guys like that in the receiving core that are just freshmen, redshirt freshmen, young guys, need some time to develop, but Lane's known to do that. Like Lane is known, I'll say in my opinion, Lane is known to build receivers and build receiving cores. So in that aspect, I think Lane's going to have him a phenomenal receiving core. But the problem with LSU's transfer portal was they were not necessarily addressing the offensive line, nor could they really find their quarterback. But I will say both those problems have necessarily been fixed when you look at who they've grabbed. We go ahead and address the offensive line. I will say the biggest problem with the offensive line class in LSU's portal will be that they're young. I think there's only like 1 or 2 like juniors, redshirt juniors in the entire portal. Everybody else are freshmen, redshirt freshmen, maybe sophomore. So you got a very inexperienced group of guys that's going to need a lot of time to develop. Hopefully spring ball can give them that developmental time. But what helps them out is what they've grabbed out of the quarterback position. You got London Clark out of Elon. He is a redshirt freshman. He's going to have 3 or 4 years of eligibility left. You have Hudson Longstreet out of USC, former 5-star. He's a freshman. He's going to have another 4 years of eligibility left. You got Sam Levitt, who's probably the biggest name in this transfer portal class from Arizona State. He's a redshirt sophomore. So he's going to have another maybe 2 to 3 years of eligibility left. And I will say, with that quarterback group, LSU has it made now. I would say last year's LSU quarterback room was pretty good. The coaching could not take advantage of it, but Lane has got himself a quarterback group. And that was my biggest critique on Lane Kiffin portal class was they were missing out on quarterback. And until they figure out their quarterback, I'm not going to give a particular stance on how they would look in 2026. And then if you look at some other key positions like running back, I think Dylan Jones or Dale Jones out of Wisconsin, Aiden Durham coming back out of the portal to stay at LSU, AC Gage out of UCF, a sophomore. I mean, their running back group, I think, is a little bit more built because what they had last year was a bunch of elusive backs, pass catchers. You didn't really have that ball carrier that you will have with Jones. He's going to be your 3-down back. You can guarantee tote him the rock 15 times, 17, 20 times a game, and he's going to be okay. Now, injuries was a little concern with him, but he's going to be more than likely your 3rd-down back, your power back, with Durham being your speedy, elusive back, and then Stacey Cage adding to that complement to Durham. So overall, the 2026 portal class, I think LSU's definitely put themselves in the race. I'm not going to sit here and say where LSU stands in the SEC yet, but I will say LSU is in the race. And once I watch some off-season film on their spring ball activities, then I can probably give you a better stance of the entirety of the SEC. But keep a close eye on LSU's offense and keep a close eye on how that receiving core operates with the new quarterbacks come 2026. Now, the biggest talk of today's podcast will have to be the national championship game. You got Miami and Indiana. And for me coming into the season, Indiana, I viewed them as a 9-10 win team. I thought it was extremely possible that they could make the Big Ten title game, and a lot of people didn't respect Indiana. And for whatever reason, everyone said they are not going to have the same season that they had last year. I guess a lot of people did not expect Kurt Scanetti to be as good as he was. A team that I didn't really respect was Miami. And a lot of that was because a lot of folks overhyped Carson Beck coming into the season. Now, if you've seen any of my offseason stuff and you listen to anything that I said offseason-wise about Miami, they needed a defense. If they could have a defense, I think they would have stood strong in the ACC. Offensively, I was not under the belief that Carson Beck was a Heisman-level quarterback. And once we started really getting out of the first couple weeks of the season, everyone was saying, Heisman guy, Heisman guy, Heisman guys. I was like, look, man, y'all haven't watched enough film. Because if you watch them at Georgia and you watch them during the off seasons at Georgia, and look, I was a Georgia guy, so I was very exclusive on watching Georgia film. And what I've seen out of Carson Beck was not Heisman level. Not saying he can't go into the NFL and be an NFL caliber quarterback. I think he can definitely make an NFL roster. But making an NFL roster is a lot different than winning the Heisman. I don't think he was a Heisman level guy all season long, which kind of led me to have to stand double down on my stance of Miami is not a threat for the playoffs. Miami is not a threat for the national championship. And that's just because of what I've said all season long. So I'm not a guy to switch up from what I've said. I will admit that I'm wrong, but even though if I admit that I'm wrong, I'm going to have to still stand behind what I said, unless it's just drastically just incorrect. It's drastically incorrect, I will fix myself. But up to this point of Miami, before they got into the national championship game, I had to stand behind what I was on. And I didn't watch the A&M game, but I figured that game was going to be extremely close. A&M was extremely fraudulent. A&M, to me, was going to be the weakest of the 12 team, or 10 teams if you don't count the group of 5, in the playoffs. But I watched Ohio State. I watched Ole Miss. That defensive line, let me tell you, was probably one of the best defensive lines in college football outside of Indiana. And I'll talk more about Indiana's line here in a minute. But secondary-wise, they were fully healthy. That is something that I missed, was the injury report coming back from Miami. But with a healthy secondary, a extremely well-disciplined and coached defensive line, Miami's defense is for real. And they showed you in that Ohio State game. Like, they are legitimate. They know how to turn points from the defensive side. Ole Miss game, I think, exploited them a little bit, but that's just because Ole Miss is the best offense in the country. When you're talking about up-tempo pace, they can score the ball in like 30 seconds. That is Ole Miss. It also kind of showed you a little bit of what you're getting out of Carson Beck. The last couple games has showed you, as long as you keep Carson Beck confident, you manage the load that you have on him, and just let him be a game manager, and that's who Carson Beck is, and he's a game manager, then you can see him start making smart decisions. And once he starts making smart decisions, then you will start seeing that offense start operating at a different level. But once he starts spiraling, he will spiral until there's no end. So I'll say the biggest keys for Miami is, and Mario Cristobal and the rest of the offensive staff, is to keep things controlled and limited for Carson Beck, to allow him to build his confidence. Once you see his confidence is built, then you can start opening it up. And then the trenches have to be on its top game. Defensive line has to perform as well as it has all off playoff season long. Offensive line is going to have to gear up to face probably the biggest challenge they've faced out of a defensive line since the playoffs have started. And they're going to have to limit big plays. The biggest ways that they're going to address a lot of these concerns will be the tight spacing. Miami can pull guard, centers, tackles very quickly because of how tight their offensive line lines up. But that explosiveness is something that secondary is going to have to really sit on. We saw it in the Ole Miss game. Granted, like I said, Ole Miss, best team in the country, offense in the country. They're very up-tempo. They gave Miami a lot of problems because of the up-tempo. Secondary couldn't hold up. And that's where I think Indiana can flip the game. Indiana can ride out any tempo it needs. Up-tempo, down-tempo. It doesn't matter. They can play extremely slow, extremely fast. They have a huge flexibility in their offense. I think they have probably the biggest threats of receivers Miami has faced all season long. Now, Ole Miss receivers are good, but I don't think they're Indiana receivers. We're certain. Cooper, Beck. I mean, you have a trio of receivers that can hit you at all three levels. All three guys are red zone threats. All three guys can make deep ball plays. All three guys can make any intermediate route plays. Like, what you're going to get out of those three guys is going to be extremely deadly. The running back room just complements what those receivers can do. And when you look at Indiana's defensive line, I mean, this is going to be one of the best defensive lines, like I said, that Miami has faced. I believe that this Indiana defensive line can get 6, 7, 8 sacks on Miami. That's just how good they are. So for me, this game comes down to one thing. It's not the offensive line. It's not the time of possession. It's not the turnovers. It's sacks. Which defensive line can get home more? It's not going to be who can stop the defensive line. It's going to be which one can get to the quarterback the most. Indiana is a guaranteed 4 or 5 sack team. Miami is a guaranteed 4 or 5 sack team. So it's going to be about who can push to 6, who can push to 8. If Miami can get to 4 or 5, but Indiana's sitting around 8, Indiana's going to win. If you flip the coin and it's Miami with 8 and Indiana around the 4 or 5, Miami's going to win. So the national championship game is going to be decided in the trenches, specifically by quarterback pressure. And that's who I think is going to be the deciding factor on winning the game. And like I've stated all season long, all playoff long, Indiana is the team for me to win it all. So like always, tell me what y'all think. Hit me up on my other social media platforms, and I will see y'all in the next episode.